dear guests, can I start our event? First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody today at the embassy. I'd like to say and to remind you that it's not just an embassy event. It's an event that we have been preparing in a good partnership with Center for Strategic and International Studies and with Peterson Institute of Economics. It's a wonderful partnership for us because these two institutions have been doing Russian studies for quite a long period of time. One of them focusing more on political strategic issues, the other one on economics. And we certainly would appreciate in the future continued partnership in that kind of researches and our events here at the embassy. We are extremely fortunate to have First Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, Mr. Shuvalov. I do not believe that he needs to be formally introduced because he's a very well-known person, not only in Russia but throughout the world. He's one of the formidable experts in government management and being First Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Shuvalov is the person who is very much involved in developing strategic plans and strategic goals of Russian government, especially in economic affairs. Without much of taking time of the speakers who would be of much more interest than I am for the audience, I would like to invite Mr. Shuvalov to make an introductory statement, and we will continue with Mr. Bernstein of Peterson Institute of Economics and Mr. Cutchins from the CASIS as our coordinators at this event. Thank you very much, and Mr. Shuvalov, could I invite you to take the floor?
Good morning, and I understand that translation provided, but as all of you are very busy people, I was asked to speak English, so it's not my language, but so forgive me if something wrong, but I'm pretty comfortable speaking this language. I like English, and I like American English, and I like America. So here in the United States, I was visiting different institutions 2 years ago, and it was a very interesting trip for me exactly after the Heiligendamm Summit, G8 Summit. And once, we were discussing possible outcome after the elections, and I was speaking with American colleagues and said that the third candidate possible. And next morning, everybody in my country, not in America, was, laughing about, the whole situation that here in the States, I was speaking with American analysts, people who, think about Russia, write about Russia, and here I was talking about candidates who would be possibly taking the position of the Russian president. Now, 2 years after, we have absolutely different situation, and we are passing not very we are passing difficult times at the moment. I think and I hope that that the worst time is behind. It does mean that we are not prepared if something bad happens again, but now the whole situation in my country is much better than a year ago. Exactly a year ago, we were observing bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers. And we were observing first, and then we were feeling that we felt ourselves that the economy is suffering. So credits or loans were not possible for the industries. The indexes were dramatically declining, and it was absolutely clear that we will not be just a paradise island somewhere with our reserves, because in September last year we had almost $600 billion reserved. And just a few months earlier, it seemed like Russia, even with all the sufferings the world economy will have, Russia will be somewhere safer placed, and we don't have any problems. Again, in September, it was absolutely clear that we will suffer even more than the States and European countries. Immediately, we understood that nobody will help because the partners from G8 all will get their own problems. The biggest problems will be, in America. Then it was obvious that Germany and Japan will suffer, and Russia, because of its economy structure, we realized that there is no exit just, spending money. We need to do something in order to cope with possible redundancy, with pensioners, with people who are losing jobs, and with industries which immediately couldn't sell any of its products, like metal, oil, gas, and we had, dramatically reducing the prices and the quantity of products. Immediately, it was not possible even to talk about the half of the amount of metals we were selling in the middle of 2008. We realized that we will need to, first of all, to save our fiscal and banking sectors. It was the same as in the States and elsewhere, and it was a very difficult task because our banking system is not well developed, if I can say so, and we have people in my country who don't believe or don't trust the banking sector, because in 1998 many people lost their savings, and immediately there were rumors that everything people saved for the period of 10 years will be burned immediately, and they will get any penny. So we guaranteed their deposits. We adopted special legislation guaranteeing people their money up to 12,000 euros, and then the banks who are not the members of the special, guaranteeing structure, we provided special loans from the budget to these banks, and we let these banks exist. Only 6 banks during that period were taken over by special governmental agency, and everybody else survived. We thought that we have in my country 1,200 banks. We think that's a lot. Maybe the whole system needs 600, 700, but very, very good base banks. And experts were saying that many banks will be bankrupt. And in reality, we're at the stage where we have only 30 banks which lost their licenses, and 6 banks were taken over by the government in order to fulfill all the obligations and to pay all the money back to ordinary people. So the worst months were December, January, and February, and we were not just giving money to the people, as you can very often read in the press that Russian government was doing different populistic things, which is not true. We realized that all the reserves we have, we can spend for our needs, including reforms. And even during those months, we decided that pension reform, which we were planning beforehand, we will fulfill, and we will spend enormous amount of money, and we will launch the pension reform in 2010. We had, huge critics from different people saying that maybe we need to spend that money for infrastructure, maybe to support different industries. but we realized that this is the key issue. If we talk about modernization, we need to sort out the problem with future pensioners, and these people need to understand how they will be supported by the whole pension system. So doing those different things, subsidizing different industries, giving money to people, we started thinking about our future agenda. And then President Medvedev announced that we must exit from this politics in 2009 with new agenda of modernization. When the crisis is over, then it should be obvious to everybody that we are starting a new structure of our economy. And he set up a special commission with 5 different directions of work. He leads this work himself, and we are preparing now, drafting our budget for 2010, that when the crisis finishing, we have agenda which will create, for sure, knowledge-based economy. We started talking about knowledge-based economy in 2006 when we hosted G8 summit in St. Petersburg, and the main subject was energy security, as you know. And even talking about energy security, we were always wishing to tell all our partners that for Russia, future is not only oil and gas, metals and others, but we think to create, along with your help and assistance, knowledge-based economy. And now we're doing this, which is not easy. It will take a lot of efforts and funds, and that's why we understand our responsibility to work together in G20 format, in G8 format, in order to coordinate all our actions, not just fight against crisis internally, to fight the crisis globally and to get something new for our economy, which will, lead Russia to a status of very reliable partner, providing oil, gas, and other resources, and at the same time being an interesting place to invest, and showing that people living in Russia are well educated, and they're doing the same things as in the States, in European economies, doing product which is knowledge demanding, and understanding that we have skills and abilities to convert our economy into something completely new. At the same time, we understand now that the political structure is well, organized. Many people ask the same question about how, this structure works with Prime Minister of Putin, who is definitely leader of the party and well accepted in the country, and President Medvedev. And now, it's obvious that, it works like a well-oiled team. They all, they work as the whole team. The government works and the presidential administration works as the whole team. We don't observe any contradictions or something. And because in the Constitution we have completely clear outlined the obligations and the powers of the President and Prime Minister and the government as a whole, so we observe now that everybody does his job, and very successfully. And even we passed not easy time with redundancy, with social. It was very difficult for people because many lost their jobs. They couldn't pay back their mortgages and so on. But still, we understand that the social and political system are pretty stable, and now unemployment is reducing, and the whole system, works very stable. At the moment, we are observing positive figures of economic growth. For the third month in a row, we have positive growth. And we understand that the whole plan we invented in November 2008 was completely right, because it was very clear for us that the first half of the year would be dramatic for us. We will observe dramatic losses. And the second half of the year would be positive for the Russian economy, along with the trends we observe globally. And as you know, in Pittsburgh, all the leaders of G20 will get together in a few days. They will discuss different issues, and one of them is reserve currencies. And I just want to confirm then our internal plans for ruble, to convert ruble into regional reserve currency, is still in the agenda, and we think it's completely possible, because even now we are demonstrating not very high level of inflation. It's lower than predicted. I think that this year it will be lower than 11%. And along with that, I would like to tell you about dollar. Again, is in many articles you can read about our position against dollar, which is not true. We always say that dollar is the strong currency. We have our reserves in dollars, and we think that just to be dependent on one reserve currency is not very wise. That's why we need to create new reserve currencies, but not against the dollar. And for Russians, it's very important. We will build up ruble as reserve currency for the region, and we will still depend on dollar. We will rely on dollar, and we think that dollar has a very strong future, but which means that altogether, along with American politicians and experts, we need to create new rules of working together globally and having more and more reliable currencies. And that's it for the beginning. I think your questions I'm ready for them. I will stay here.
Good. Thank you very much for the introductory remarks. Let me simply say at the outset, I'm Fred Bergston, Director of the Peterson Institute for International Economics. Thanks very much to the Ambassador for hosting this event in your elegant new facilities here. We're very proud and pleased to be here with you, and particularly to co-host this event for the Deputy Prime Minister. As you said, we at the Peterson Institute, along with our colleagues from CSIS, do a great deal of work on the Russian economy, as well as other parts of the world economy. We recently published this book called The Russia Balance Sheet, which I will transmit directly to the Deputy Prime Minister. Andy Kutchins and my colleague Anders Osland co-wrote that book. We're now into a second major study under our Russia Balance Sheet project, as we call it, the objective of which is to better explain what's going on in the Russian economy, the security and foreign policy issues, to an American audience, to hopefully provide a basis for the kind of constructive policies that you are calling for. Andy, you want to say a word at the outset, and then I'll pose a couple of questions to our speaker for the morning.
Sure, Fred. Thanks very much. First of all, let me express on behalf of John Hamry and CSIS my thanks to Ambassador Kislyak for inviting us to co-host this wonderful event today in the beautiful new room here at the embassy, and we hope that this is the first of a number of gigs that we can collaborate together on. Secondly, I'd like to thank very much Igor Ivanovich Shuvalov for gracing his presence here in Washington with us today. He's a man with large political responsibilities and someone who I've always viewed with a very, very bright political future. And it's always a pleasure to see you and to interact with you. I'm sorry I missed you at the Valdai Discussion Club this year, but that makes it even more special to see you here today. I think it is worth remembering for a moment, as you noted at the outset, where we were a year ago. And I'm sure that Ambassador Kislyak has not forgotten, as he just arrived in in Washington in the summer of 2008, and we had the war in Georgia, and that was the nadir of U.S.-Russia relations for a long time. The relationship was virtually frozen. Much discussion of a new Cold War. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, as Igor Ivanovich mentioned, Lehman Brothers went bust in the middle of September, and we entered the global economic crisis. The only good news about that for Russia, I think, is that the global economic crisis took the Georgia war in Russia off the front pages here in the United States, and it also took it away as a campaign issue, really, in the presidential campaign in 2008. But it was a very tough time. I remember seeing John Hamre in the hallway at CSIS, and he asked me how I was. And I said, well, John, aside from a global depression and a new Cold War, I'm great. Mm-hmm. And Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? I wanted to just make a comment to kind of broaden the discussion a little bit to the U.S.-Russia relationship and make one comment. Of course, Mr. Obama was elected, promised to work on improving the U.S.-Russia relations. Vice President Biden talked in Munich of the reset in U.S.-Russia relations. And I felt that there have been three issues that have been driving this reset, mainly Iran, Afghanistan, and nuclear security and arms control. And I think that the reset has been facilitated to some extent also that some of the more neuralgic issues on the agenda seem to have been less featured. And of course, one of these is the NATO enlargement question. Then, of course, last week we had the ballistic missile defense decision coming out of the Obama administration. And that raises the question of the much so-called ballyhooed possible grand bargain, if you will. The trade of missile defense for more Russian support on Iranian sanctions that many people have talked about. Now, such grand bargains in international relations are very, very rare indeed. In fact, the only one significant one I can think of on security issues would be in the wake of resolving the Cuban Missile Crisis, in which we agreed to take our missiles out of Turkey while the Russians pulled their missiles out of Cuba. It was a decision we didn't learn about until years later. The Obama administration decision taken just last week, it wasn't taken because of Russia, as many administration officials have claimed. There's a new threat assessment of the Iranian missile capability, new technologies, and I think a different political environment here. Now, I just want to make one brief comment on this. And it's my luxury, not being a government official, is that I am totally independent and can say whatever I want. So these are really my personal views. I think to say that this decision on missile defense doesn't concern Russia, though, would be disingenuous. And the point I want to make is that I think there are domestic political realities here in Washington. And while there may be no direct linkage on this question, there are certainly hopes and expectations. The Obama administration just made a pretty tough decision to address the Iranian missile threat in a different way. I think it could be actually a more effective system. It looks very promising. But there certainly were costs domestically and there are costs internationally of the decision which the Obama administration made in reviewing a very significant policy from the past. Now, for Moscow, it seems to me a tougher approach to Iran may be a similar opportunity to review a past policy that Moscow has been taking. I mean, there are many skeptics that here in the United States that think the Russians will pocket this gift, or freebie, as it's been called, on the missile defense question and feel no compunction to be any more flexible on Iran. Well, I hope that, personally, that the Russian government will find it in its interest to be somewhat more flexible on the Iran question on its own merit. And the point is that I would make that here, that the domestic, if there is not a more flexible position, I think that the domestic political support, what there is in the United States for improving relations with Russia, will evaporate. And that will be a problem then when it comes to the WTO accession, the Jackson-Vanik Amendment, a civilian nuclear cooperation agreement, Senate approval of an arms control treaty, and a whole number of issues. And maybe even more importantly, I would be concerned that the Obama administration itself would lose interest in continuing to pursue with the degree of time and political investments it's making in trying to improve ties with Russia. So I hope very much that we will be able to continue on this track. Thanks.
Just a few words. Russia, before Soviet Union and the United States, always, had very intensive talks about security issues, positive, negative, and so on. But I think now the time when we can talk really about economy, trade, things which will be definitely different, a new stage in our relationship. Because, of course, the United States of America and Russia responsible for the peace globally, because we are the major players. But, for ordinary people, I believe in the States, all these security issues are not very important. They're important because they want to feel secured. But, both Americans and Russians will feel secured if we have closer ties in economy, in business, in, creating new businesses where we will defend our common economic interests. Because while we have all these, or we had fights or, difficult talks about different missile issues and so on and so forth, just businesses were observing they didn't want to invest. And we are responsible to create a climate, real positive business climate in order to let Americans invest in my country. We are open, we are ready, and we would like Russians to be welcomed here in the States. Once we have, cross-owned assets, then, I believe that even, security talks will be easier for both administrations. And now, all these signals we get from American administration are very important for us, and we are accepting them, and we are paying back, I believe. And I guess that now this is the real time to convert our bilateral relationship into something completely new, where economy will be subject number one, and then global security may be equal, but not the leading, question or subject in order to let two presidents talk. I think that common people, you are the great country. Russia is the great country as well. We have a population over 140 million people, and together these nations could create a lot. And I think that if we talk about, as I said, we talk in my country about knowledge-based economy, it means that in cooperation along with the United States we can achieve a lot. You have very close ties with China, other countries, but Russia could be a very interesting partner for businessmen from America. So I think a lot of things you mentioned are very important. But what I pursue in my work, speaking with Americans and Russians, now in G20 and other formats, we need to talk more about values people get from common business interests.
Could I pick up on one immediate aspect of that and ask you to explain something to us? And that's on the issue of WTO membership, which would obviously promote the kind of reforms in Russia and diversification of the Russian economy you're talking about. You said in your remarks that you have a well-oiled machine in your government now with your president and your prime minister, that there are no contradictions. But I must say there were some confusions here over different statements about WTO membership over the last couple of months. Mr. Putin talked about joining as a customs union, which the head of the WTO then said was not possible. President Medvedev, others, yourself, have talked about a more direct route. Could you clear that up for us? Tell us where it stands. We here have the sense that this could be done fairly quickly, and I think most of us in this room would like to see it done very quickly. You should know, incidentally, that at our institute, we've done a comprehensive study of Russian membership. We have not yet released it because we were waiting for a time when the issue seemed to be coming imminent. We'd love to be able to do that right away and help promote the process. So tell us, where does it stand while you're here in Washington this week? Will you be taking initiatives on that? Will you be able to get some meaningful, rapid progress so that that very important element of Russia's role in the world economy and our relationship between our two countries could take a major step forward?
Good question. I'm here in Washington, D.C. in order to talk about WTO accession. Because tomorrow I'll be in New York City, I'll be presenting Russia in the Climate Summit, which will be organized by the General Secretary of the United Nations. But being in the States and not to talk about WTO accession, I think it's not the right way to work with your new administration. We met with Mr. Kirk in St. Petersburg in last June. We talked about possible scenarios, how to proceed, how to make it quicker. And so first you need to understand there is no contradiction amongst the Russian government or administration that we need to be within WTO. That's the strategic aim for Russia to be WTO member. That's full stop. I want you to understand there is no even, no person within administration or the government who would even say something against WTO. But the problem is we've been trying to access for 16 years. While Cuba is the member of WTO, China is the member of WTO, Kyrgyzstan, and Ukraine and others. And we have passed enormous, it was a very long way. We have achieved a lot. We have a new legislation in my country, which is very, I can say, because I know that for sure, it's very modern. We have custom duties which are, which were discussed with European Union and the United States and other countries, WTO members. And we have just 4 issues left, which we cannot sort out with Americans and others, and we cannot, we cannot finalize our accession procedure. Which means that it is not just our ability to negotiate and find compromise. We believe it was the previous administration position. Whether it is Georgia or war, whatever, something always happens which, then changes American position. And for many years now, I have received different, reports from people who are the, negotiating team, that we have maybe 4 or 6 months left in order to finalize everything, and we will, by the end of the year, we'll be within WTO, and it doesn't happen. And when I met with Mr. Kirk in St. Petersburg, I said, okay, look, we have been discussing WTO accession for 16 years, and for 13 years, we've been discussing with Belarus and Kazakhstan the creating of customs union. And always we tell to our partners, to Kazakh and to Belarusians, that, look, let us first finalize everything relating to WTO, and then we will create customs union. But people are observing, just ordinary people, and it's becoming an endless story. So we say, okay, if you don't want us to be within WTO as soon as possible, then we will create a customs union, which will be enforced from the January the 1st, 2010, and then we will synchronize our accession along with Kazakhstan and Belarus. But even making that announcement, both President and Prime Minister, they said that our strategic aim is to become the member of WTO. Then it's just the question of tactics, how to achieve this. And when we met in St. Petersburg with Mr. Kirk, I said, okay, we have 4 issues left, let's find compromises. But if you always want us to do something, and American administration doesn't change the position, it's not the compromise. It's not the right way to work with Russians. If you find always, something, a special vehicle how to make China a member of WTO, if you have different approaches to different countries, including Ukraine and former Soviet republics, why don't you speak with us and find a real compromise which will be, for the interests of American people and for the Russians? Instead, we always heard, okay, first please, do something towards American pork or chicken, or change your veterinary rules or whatever. Our approach is, yes, if you think that there is something wrong in our regulations, we can change them. But if the same regulations exist in European countries, and you even don't raise your voice and you just accept it, why should we change it? Maybe you will change the different ways how to prepare the pork before sending it to Russia, maybe to use different chemicals and so on and so forth, because our experts, they don't believe that it's healthy, or different other issues. So back in Moscow, we had different meetings with my colleagues from the government and different experts, and we have prepared positions which could be accepted as compromise. It's not completely our position, and it's not completely your position. It's something in between. And we are ready to talk, and we want to accelerate our accession. The truth is, we can try to access as customs union only for those issues which are covered within customs union. It's not a lot. But anyway, to finalize our accession, we need to continue bilateral negotiations. And in order to make it easier and, maybe frank towards our partners, Kazakhstan and Belarus, we decided to create one negotiating team, which is led by a Russian expert, Mr. Medvedkov. He is well known in WTO, and he speaks on behalf of 3 countries. And we said, okay, whether it is the customs union or bilateral talks, we want to make it as soon as possible, based on real compromise and understanding that WTO accession is the priority for each country within customs union. So when and it's very easy when you talk with people in Geneva who are working in drafting the working group report. They always say that 99% depends on American administration. If American administration wants Russia to be within WTO, then it's 2-3 months working and everything done. If not, we'll always find another obstacle for from different countries, Canada, Australia, when we talk about agricultural dossier or something else. We believe, because I'm responsible for this issue in the government, along with customs union, it's in my hands, that we can finalize this issue very quickly, maybe a few weeks. But I have to confess, and and I believe in it, that it can be done only with the help and assistance of American administration. Then all the issues left behind, all these 4 issues we need to discuss with Americans, will be sorted out immediately, and we don't see any possible obstacle to finalize this, all these talks, and then accession would be completely visible.